30 videos in 30 days, day 24. Today's question comes from so many of you. Man, I cannot tell you how many questions, well, I could tell you, but I didn't take the time to count, but I can't tell you how many questions I got from you asking about heartbreak and how to heal ourselves and how to mend after the loss or the end of a relationship. So what I'd like to share with you today are some things that have helped me, and then some things that hopefully just can help us shift our perspective and make the healing journey easier, or at least put it in context and help it make a little more sense. I think the first thing to acknowledge is that it's not going to hurt forever. I know, especially after that wound is raw and new and fresh and it's just ended, we feel like we're never going to get over it. And everything reminds us of them. And we cannot bear the thought of feeling the way that we feel another day, but it will get better and you're not going to feel this way forever. The one constant in our universe and in our reality is that change is constant. We are always in a process of evolving and growing and shifting and transforming. So while it may be excruciatingly painful right now, it won't always be. I think the next thing to remember is that healing has its own timeline. Healing really has no interest in our agenda. And I know that especially once we're sort of into the process that we are feeling frustrated and like, God, I just want to be over it already. Why can't I stop feeling this way? And we put so much pressure on ourselves to hurry the healing process along. And I think that that actually ends up making it more difficult because now we're putting pressure on ourselves and sort of holding ourselves hostage and putting all this intensity that doesn't necessarily need to be there. So I think that yes, sometimes it is tedious, and yes, sometimes we feel like, God, I just want to be over it, but understanding that healing takes as long as it takes. And the one thing that is guaranteed to make it go as quickly as it can possibly go is your willingness to be so compassionate with yourself and so willing to meet yourself where you are. And if you're sad, it's okay to be sad. And if you're angry, it's okay to be angry. And if you're mad or frustrated or confused, it's okay to be all of those things. It doesn't always make sense when it comes to matters of the heart and sort of sorting out how we feel and what went wrong and where are we now. So trusting that it will get better and also understanding that putting pressure on yourself to try to force the healing process oftentimes only makes it worse. I think there's something to be said here about this concept of the one. Right, I blame Julia Roberts, and I love me some Julia Roberts movies, but I think this Hollywood idea that we have been sold that someone is the one, and what I mean by that is that we have been taught to believe that if and when we have a really strong experience with someone, right, there's this powerful catalytic connection, and there's sparks and fireworks, and oh my God, I just felt it on all levels, and the sex was amazing, and we talked for hours, and it was like this connection, I could just fall into their eyes. That doesn't necessarily mean that the one, they may be the one, but the one doesn't necessarily mean that it's forever. Sometimes the one is the person who wakes us up to the truth that we have been really shut off from our heart and from being open to love in a relationship. And sometimes the one that we thought was the one really came in just to wake us up and sort of reignite that spark within us and that passion so that we can then create a space in our life for someone else to be there. And so maybe that person comes in to wake us up and then they leave and then the next person comes in or the next person comes in. So I think this idea that because we have an intensity with someone means that it's forever, I don't think that's necessarily always true. I think that sometimes we may never know why someone has come into our awareness. We may never have a full understanding of why someone came in. I also know that sometimes the catalyst for growth and change in a relationship is when someone shows up, and sometimes the growth and catalyst for change is when someone leaves. Sometimes someone comes into our life to show us that what we thought we wanted isn't what we want anymore. Maybe we have a really old, outdated idea of what we thought we wanted in a relationship or who we were in a relationship, and then someone comes along and sort of gives us exactly that, and we go, oh, actually, that's not what I wanted at all. I think one of the things that we can really look at, especially when we find ourselves like this pain of how do I get back to myself and what do I do with this feeling of the loss of someone, and so often, and I see this a lot, so often we put someone else in the center of our life so willingly, right? We are so willing to pour our time and our attention and our love and our affection and our focus into them, and they become our priority and they become our world, and then they leave and we go, well, what am I supposed to do now? The answer to that question is you are supposed to do for yourself what you were so willing to do for them. Remember, when that person came along, how suddenly they became your world. Suddenly they became your priority. And you showed yourself, if you look back on that relationship, you can see how powerful your focus is, how you are so willing to get up at the crack of dawn and do what they wanted you to do, and stay up late at night doing what they wanted you to do, and spend time and energy, doing whatever, that you just wanted to support them and nurture them and have them be the center of your world and make them feel so special and wonderful. Do that for yourself. Find a way to turn that compassion, to turn that focus, to turn that willingness, to turn that love and that affection onto yourself. Take that spotlight and pivot it towards yourself and ask yourself, okay, what do I need now? What do I need now to bring myself back to the center of my life? What do I need now to return myself to the center of my life? I think another thing that we can ask ourselves when we feel like there's this big emptiness within us, and this is something that I really had to learn and that I really had to contend with, was what did I think that they had that I didn't have? What was I so convinced they brought to my life that perhaps within myself I felt was a deficit, or this unwillingness, or this sort of low self-esteem, and saying, well, they're this and I'm not that. Really beginning to look at, well, what is it that I feel is missing with them here? What is it that I feel is not present in my experience now that they're gone? And finding a way to create that stuff for you. Finding a way to create that experience for yourself, to bring those things to yourself, to find a way to be the center of your own world again, and really ask yourself and get really, really honest. Okay, what was it that I believed they held that I did not hold? And how can I find a way to nurture that and create that for myself? One of the things that I will share with you is several years ago, I had this experience with a guy who at the time, man, we met and it was like sparks flew, and it was so intense and there were so many layers, and I was convinced that he was the one. Clearly, he ended up not being the one since I'm single, but one of the things that I really, really learned from him, and one of the things that he really provided for me, was an opportunity to look at some of my really old, outdated beliefs around relationships. One day we were having a phone conversation. It was a wonderful, lovely conversation, and the guy was a super cool guy. I'm still friends with him, and he's a great, wonderful man. And after we got off the phone conversation, and I was feeling so warm and fuzzy about the talk that we had just had, and he had been so kind and so sweet. And as I was making lunch, I had this little thought sort of slither through my awareness in the back of my head that said, oh, but he was being really nice to you. You need to be careful, because when guys are nice to you, it means that they don't like you. It was such a short, like brief, silent moment. That voice was so tiny and so sinister and so insidious, but I thought, no, wait a minute. And I grabbed that slithery little thought by the tail and I pulled it back. And what I realized, it astounded me, was that I had this belief active within me that if a guy is nice to you, that it means that he doesn't like you. Blew my mind. The point of this is to say that what I got from that relationship just in that moment alone was far more valuable than any belief or any experience of him being the one or being in a long-term relationship with him. And clearly he was not meant to be in my life in long-term in that way, because he's not. But what I learned from that moment was priceless. I also know, and speaking from experience, I can say there's at least 3 guys in my dating history that in the moment when I was with them, I was convinced they were the one, and I was so brokenhearted and so broken up when they left. And I have since been given an opportunity to revisit them as friends or acquaintances, or just running into them and spending time with them. And every single one of them, I was like, man, I fucking dodged that bullet. There is no way that I could be with that person. There is no way I could have been in a relationship with him long term. We would have driven each other crazy. So allow yourself to feel what you're feeling. Trust that there is value to the relationship, even if it doesn't make sense now. And understand that things will get better, and that the best thing that we can do is just to love ourselves through it, find a way to make it through it, call upon your friends, find things to distract you, start new hobbies, take classes, go work out, find a way to get out of your head and get out there and start moving forward again. But give yourself the time and the space that you need to heal. And trust that it's not always going to feel as bad as it does now. I hope that this helps. Trust me, I feel you. I've been there. Thank you for the question.